If I was standing on trial for something like that, and they were like, how do you plead as far as this being a hate crime? Well, it was a depiction of Satan. Do I hate Satan? Yes.
Approximately 70% of abortion-related threats of violence in the U.S. since the Dobbs decision have been against pro-life groups.
There's a movement, at least amongst Christianity, to insert truth more into the public space, but it's not nearly enough. We're getting drowned out still by the opposing voices.
This is the point I want to make with this episode. Fearing or being unduly angry about the state of the world is not the will of God for your life. God is making up the difference for you, because when he looks at you, he sees Jesus. He sees Jesus.
It was that moment, I'll never forget it, that I realized, no, just because my parents go to church or whatever's going on, there has to be something that happens personally between me and Christ.
Welcome back to another episode of the Life and Faith Podcast. Folks, this episode is not for children's ears. Okay, we're going to talk about something that happened in culture. And this thing that happened in culture, it is not for children to hear. So if you are in your car listening to this and you have your family with you and stuff like that, just turn this episode off and catch it at another time. It's definitely important. It's definitely a critical topic, but I want to reiterate, is not for children's ears. There's some content in this that I'm actually going to mark this explicit on the thing with saying that it has explicit content, because I want parents to know this is not for their kids. Okay? So, that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this episode. Parental discretion advised. We live in a sick world, and there's a lot of things that they do, and you just don't get it,
True story.
You just don't get it. But fortunately, we have an ancient word to lean on, to understand, to reflect back to us the life that we are seeing before us, right? It's like we see it and we go, we can't understand it, but yet we have this perfect magnifying glass, this decoder, if you will, that will explain to us exactly why it's happening.
Yeah, and think about what you know about the Bible. If you've read through the Bible, there's some explicit stuff in the Bible that happens, some horrifying stuff that happens.
That's true.
And so the Bible talks about that stuff, and it's there as a warning, if you will, for us.
Yeah, so I guess if you're comfortable with explaining what certain grown-up topics are from the Bible to your kids, then maybe I guess the recommendation would be to listen to this episode first and decide for yourself if you want to. Because some people, they are more clear with their kids. Like they'll say, this is what that means, this is what that means. We might talk about, I remember I was in a Bible study or a church service one time, and it was at a home church, and we had adults and kids together. And I think I maybe mentioned circumcision. and one of the little girl in the room said, "What's a circumcision?" And I was like, just shoot me right between the eyes and paint the walls with my brains, because I just was so I did not even think.
And she said, "Mommy, what does he mean by shoot him in between the eyes?"
I didn't say it aloud. I was just thinking it. It's like,
I know. I was just pointing that out.
But no, it was awful. It was I just didn't think about it, But yeah, there are some gruesome details in the Bible, and some that even are anyway, I'll talk about it in a minute. Okay, I got 3 different news stories I want to read to you. Okay. 3 things I read in the news, all in the same maybe hour that I was looking through, because I was like, there's got to be something in society we can talk about, as far as podcast topics go. And I really like when we do current events, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm guessing by the preface, though, that this isn't going to be along the lines of our funny news story.
No, Well, I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, it was okay. I don't know how much reception it got, so I didn't know if it was worth doing or whatever, I mean,
I think
we're not comedians, we're just regular guys, it's just kind of fun to talk about goofy stuff and be lighthearted,
I feel like those did well as far as viewership, but I've received 0 comments on it as opposed to other episodes. You know,
Yeah.
other people are like, that's enriching and that's helpful, and it's like, you know, praise God. But when it comes to the funnier ones, nobody's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I was laughing so, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's really the purpose of that was just to be, because at that point we had been talking about some heavy stuff. We had talked
Yeah.
about abortion, and we had talked about the LGBT and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I just wanted to inject some fun.
If nothing else,
You know.
it helped me, and maybe you could say the same thing. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but it helped me because it broke up the redundancy kind of the heavier topics.
Right.
And it was encouraging enough to me where I was like, okay, I feel like all that laughter, like I think I posted this on the YouTube channel, that it doeth good, like the Bible says it doeth good like a medicine, laughter does. And that was good for me. So it if anything, it helped prepare me better for the next topic we had to talk about.
Yeah. And that was a season where we were dealing with a couple of really, really heavy things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, really
on
heavy.
a personal level. Yeah.
Yep, heavy things. Okay, so I'll get started. This first one is about a man in Mississippi. A Mississippi man who admitted to destroying a statue of the pagan idol Baphomet at the Iowa Capitol has been charged with a hate crime. The statue was part of a display organized by the Satanic Temple of Iowa under state rules allowing religious displays in the Iowa Capitol during the holidays. By the way, this comes from the Des Moines Register.
Okay.
I got this article
Seems like I've heard of this. Like I heard what was going on there with the satanic rituals.
It happened a while back, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was, you know, I think we all saw the statue, right? There's another statue, not this particular thing that he destroyed. It was not the one that I've seen around, but there is a statue around of two children looking up at Satan sitting on a chair and with a big pentagram behind him. You're not familiar with this?
No, I haven't seen that.
All right, I'll show you when we're offline. But it's a sight to behold. So anyway, this is from the Des Moines Register. So the installation drew strong criticism from state and national leaders, including Governor Kim Reynolds and Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis. On December 14th, the centerpiece of the display, a figure depicting the horned deity Baphomet, was, quote, destroyed beyond repair, according to the Satanic Temple of Iowa.
Somebody went Gideon on that.
Michael Cassidy. Now, we did an episode on Lakewood.
Yeah.
And the Lakewood shooting, and I did not say the name of the person for good reason, because I didn't want the fame. But this guy, I'm saying his name. Just saying, I like this
Dan's
guy.
putting him on blast.
I like this guy. He's cool. If he comes to town, I'll buy him dinner. Michael Cassidy, a former congressional candidate from Mississippi, was charged the following day with fourth-degree criminal mischief, a misdemeanor. The Lauderdale, Mississippi man told the conservative website The Sentinel that, quote, my conscience is held captive to the word of God, not a bureaucratic decree, and so I acted.
Good for him.
Yeah. Now, Polk County prosecutors have accused Cassidy of a more serious offense. A charging document made public Tuesday charges him with felony third-degree criminal mischief and notes the act was committed, quote, in violation of individual rights under Iowa's hate crime statute. So they showed a picture of the actual display, which was, quote, destroyed beyond repair. It looks like it has like a background and looks like what are candles and then some red flowers. And I don't know, it's really hard to kind of tell from the picture what it is. It's in a poorly lit public building. You know how sometimes those old buildings, they can be kind of poorly lit and dark walls and things like that. So it wasn't too easy to see, but you can kind of check it out for yourself online. Evidence shows that the defendant made statements to law enforcement and public indicating he destroyed the property because of the victim's religion, triggering the violation of individual rights enhancement, says Lynn Hicks, the spokesman for the Polk County Attorney's Office. Cassidy's attorney, Sarah Pascal, declined to comment Tuesday on the new charge. In previous court filings, she had accused the Satanic Temple of making premature filings that, quote, like the timing and substance of the Satanic Temple of Iowa's installation of a demonic statue in the Capitol building are only meant to evoke strong emotions and incite others. Which that's kind of what it's about, right? It's like the reason they don't care to have statues in the public place, they just don't like that there are Christian, like the Ten Commandments might be up somewhere or something like that, right?
Yeah. The emotion that it evokes. Yeah.
That's her point. Is like they're just doing it to rile up the people, which I think is true.
Well, and some of it too, you got to think about it from this perspective that as long as time has been going, since the beginning, Satan has been an imitator. So it's almost like there's this satanic sentiment amongst the world, especially the lost, where if God is doing something, like if God is prominently displayed in churches and other places in America, then Satan also wants to imitate that, and he wants depictions of himself other places, which, you could say it's not really a depiction of him, it's just what people think up in their mind.
Right.
But there's the imitation, just like when Pharaoh had his magicians imitate what Moses was doing. They can only do it to a certain degree, but Satan always has been riding God's coattails, so to speak.
Yeah, what's it say in, I think it's Revelation, that in those days he'll come saying that look, there's Christ,
Mm-hmm.
but don't believe it.
Yeah. There's going to be people looking for a pseudo-Christ, which we would know, biblically speaking, as the Antichrist, yeah.
Right. Hicks, okay. Polk County Attorney's Office spokesman Hicks said in a statement that based on the information from the Satanic Temple, the cost to replace and repair the statue would be between $750 and $1,500.
Oh. That's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. Making its destruction an aggravated misdemeanor. In fact, the temple has filed a damage estimate putting the cost to replace the statue at $3,000. What makes the charge a felony, Hicks said, is the hate crime statute. Court records show Cassidy is scheduled to be arraigned on February 15th and has raised more than $84,000 for his legal defense from nearly 2,000 supporters, according to the fundraising site Give, Send, Go.
Now, see, that would be a difficult one if I was standing on trial for something like that, and they were like, how do you plead as far as it's being a hate crime? Well, it was a depiction of Satan. Do I hate Satan? Yes. I hate the flesh and the devil, and it would be hard for me to,
Yeah, is it a hate crime?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, legally speaking,
I don't know the ramifications of that. I'm definitely not a legal...
Yeah.
I don't understand the legal ramifications of it, but I think all crimes are kind of hate crimes. I mean, do you really can you really say that you like the guy you're stealing from if you steal his car? You kind of hate that guy.
Yeah. I knew...
hate the world.
I knew a family one time who they went to church as this same church as this other family, and they ended up going on their yard and pranking them just for fun. But this family who was the receiver of this prank, they had a church sign out front, and they immediately it didn't even dawn on them that it could be somebody that they know. They were just like, we're victims of hate crime. That's what they went to.
Is this a prank?
Yeah. It's like, okay, we
were hate TP'd.
Yeah.
So that's one story. That's the story that I read about this guy, Michael Cassidy. And Michael Cassidy, if you ever hear this, we just, I mean, I can't say that it's wise to screw with the government, but I think, if you're going to stand up for something, I'm glad it was that.
Yeah, and if you'd ever like us to sit down with us and talk about it, we'd love
to have you. Yeah, we'd do it over phone or over the Zoom or whatever. We can make that work. But in a way, it's pretty heroic. You had to know that they were going to be upset about it. You had to know they were going to throw the book at him. You had to know they were going to, you know what I mean? They were going to treat him like a criminal because that's, because you're kind of going to the core of what they stand for.
Yeah, on another perspective too, this kind of reminds me of. I won't say the name of the Bible college that I attended, but if you were to go and look it up, and this was a few years ago, so I'm guessing it's still the same. But what the college is known for, at least from a Wikipedia standpoint, the thing that dominates the page is this guy. Years before I got there, he went over a couple of blocks down to this adult video store and burned the place to the ground and got convicted for arson. And
oh man,
this kid thought he was going to leave his mark, on the world, and he's like, I'm going to go and destroy this porn shop. And
wow,
and yeah, he got put in jail for a long time. But that's kind of now what the college is known for is that oh, that's the arsonist college.
And they take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, so.
Wow. Second story. 6 pro-life activists. This is a story that I got from Bright.
I feel like we should say here, though, it's just dawned on me, Life and Faith Podcast does not advocate destruction of public property, arson. You know, we also don't want to infringe upon people's consciences and the spirit, the Holy Spirit's movement. But I'll just say this: legally, we don't advocate for acts of violence.
You're always the voice of reason. I appreciate you.
I'm just saying, like, I see other people doing this, and I think it's smart. What you do on your time is your own time, but there's our statement.
No, we don't. I wouldn't. Like I say, I don't think messing with the government is wise. My son asked me the other day, he said, "Can't you just lie about how much you make?" And I said, I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, yeah.
If anybody's going to be lying in this relationship, it's going to be the government.
Yeah.
They aren't going to stand by and let you do it. You know.
Yeah, they can get away with it.
They don't appreciate being lied to. If anybody in this relationship is going to lie, it's going to be them.
I'm going to lie to you, but yeah.
yeah. They don't take kindly to that.
That's a tangent I could go off.
Yeah, I wouldn't stick your finger in that particular light socket.
Yeah.
Okay, this story came from Breitbart. Okay, now this podcast we talk about political topics and we talk about from a perspective of by faith believers and all that stuff. I don't pick this story from this website because I'm super pro Breitbart or pro Fox News or whatever. I tried to lean away from the Fox News article just for that reason because we don't associate with a particular news cycle avenue. We do not associate with a particular political view. We associate with our God, our Father, and the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I can't even remember the last time I watched the mainstream news.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear because this article is going to say President Joe Biden's administration quite a bit. And so you can tell it's a little bit bent, like Joe Biden's administration says this, you know, but that's not the point.
I listen to a podcast that every time, without fail, that the host mentions Joe Biden, it's always coupled with former Vice President Joe Biden. There's no mention of him being president. It's always former Vice President.
They always do that with Obama. They're like they still call him President Obama.
Yeah,
and they call it former President Trump, and it's like
who's really in charge here?
Yeah, I can see your bias there, buddy.
Yeah.
6 pro-life activists. This is the Breitbart article. On Tuesday, were found guilty for conspiracy against rights, violating the freedom of access to clinics entrances. The act is called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, heretofore referred to as the FACE Act, in relation to a peaceful protest outside of a Tennessee abortion facility in 2021. President Joe Biden's pro-abortion administration announced in October 2022 that it had charged 11 activists involved in the March 5th, 2021 blockade of the Carafem Health Center clinic in Mount Juliet. Attorneys for the activists said they were conducting a, quote, rescue and had gathered on the second floor of the office building where the clinic is located to pray, sing hymns, and urge women not to go through with abortions. The peaceful protest was live-streamed on Facebook, according to the Catholic News Agency. 6 of the activists have now been found guilty of a misdemeanor FACE Act charge, as well as felony conspiracy against rights charge, which carries it with it the possibility of up to 11 years in prison and fines up to $250,000 for blocking the door of a clinic.
See, and this, just for comparison, there's far worse things that people have done. And I'm not even saying that that's bad, what they did, but, from the world's perspective, I guess, there's far worse things that people are out there doing and getting away with and receiving no jail time for.
Don't get ahead of me, Josh.
Yeah, I'm amazed. Like when you said 11 years, I thought, okay, it's a slap on the wrist to make an example out of them. But no, they're trying to make a big example.
A big example.
Yeah,
it's a big example, and we're going to talk about that very thing that you just said in a moment.
Yeah.
6 of the activists have now been found guilty. $250,000 fine. They include these people: Chester Gallagher, 73; Heather Idoni, 58, of Michigan; Calvin Zastro, 57, of Michigan. I'll just mention the people from Michigan, that they're from Michigan. Coleman Boyd of Bolton, Mississippi. Dennis
Guess where
Green.
we're from.
I could see my house from here.
Yeah.
The Dennis Green of Cumberland, Virginia. Paul Vaughn, 55, of Centerville, Tennessee. So 73-year-old man. 58, 57, 51, 56, 55. 4 other activists who have not gone to trial yet were only charged with the FACE Act violation and face up to 1 year in prison and fines up to $10,000, including Ava Adele of South Carolina, Eva Zastro of Arkansas, James Zastro of Eldon, Missouri, and Paul Place of Centerville, Tennessee. Another activist, 24-year-old Caroline Davis of Michigan, already took a plea deal in 2023 and agreed to testify for the government. The 6 activists are expected to be sentenced in July, the Daily Wire reported. Attorneys for Paul Vaughn, a Christian father of 11, said they were going to appeal his guilty verdict. Vaughn's attorney, said, "We are, of course, disappointed with the outcome. This was a peaceful demonstration by entirely peaceable citizens filled with prayer, hymn singing, and worship, oriented toward persuading expecting mothers not to abort their babies. Unfortunately, the Biden Department of Justice decided to characterize Paul Vaughn's peaceful actions as a felony conspiracy against rights to intimidate and punish Paul and other pro-life people and people of faith."
Can I clarify something? When it says that they were blocking the clinic, were they just standing outside, or were they literally linked in arms in arms trying
It
to...
said blockade, so I don't know the actual details of it. I didn't really dig in on it because I was focusing more on the process of what happened after.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Rather than to tell the story of that particular event.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, I didn't unfortunately dig deep enough to know that. I probably could have, but I really wanted to just focus more on how the government responded. You know,
I've seen YouTube videos regularly of people who are you're protesting the very same thing, but they'll stand out on the street corner, and they'll have shop owners on that same street come out and accuse them of blocking their store just because they don't like the message. And then they're like, "Look over there, see that camera? Those cameras are there for people just like you that will come out here and try to make these accusations. And we're standing way over here, 20 feet away from your front door. And we're not blocking it or preventing or telling anybody they can't go in." So,
yeah. Have you ever watched those videos where people stand out in the parking lot ahead of abortion clinics and talk to people and try to convince them to...
And that's what I'm picturing here, but maybe they took it a step further. I don't know, but
yeah, hard to say.
I don't know that really has any bearing on this either way. But I thought I would voice that because I thought maybe somebody listening might wonder, because that may make a difference for some people listening. Like, yeah, if you think about it, somebody's walking in to kill somebody. Wouldn't you bar the door too? But, it depends on everybody listening to this episode will probably come at that from a different angle.
Yeah. I think if you're going to get in trouble for something, that's a good thing to get in trouble for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't necessarily, I don't know where I stand on that. I hadn't really thought about that.
If I'm in jail and say I did do that, like I felt led to go and do that, but then I got the same thing happened to me. I got 11 years in jail. That inevitable question that I don't know if they actually ask this. They probably do, but you always see it in the movies where they're like, "What are you in for?" And I'll be like, "I was trying to stop a murder."
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Yep, and it was a government sanctioned murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keyword.
The Biden Department of Justice's pattern of arresting and prosecuting peaceful pro-life advocates is disturbing, Crampton said, noting criticism of the FBI's alleged targeting of pro-life activists despite the flood of attacks on pro-life centers and churches by pro-abortion activists following the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. The Dobbs decision was the decision recently made that overturned Roe v. Wade. According to the Thomas More Society, Crampton's employer, the prosecution relied heavily on the testimony of Davis, the aforementioned 24-year-old who took the plea, who participated in the protest and was arrested with the other activists but later agreed to help the government. The government also presented a woman who had scheduled an abortion that day but said she left because of the protesters. The government additionally presented a clinic employee who claimed that they were trapped inside the building during the protests, although the Thomas More Society argued that the video of the incident shows traffic clearly passing to and from the abortion clinic
there
during
you
the
go.
protest.
There you go.
Yeah. And I didn't see it, and this is an attorney. I just don't have the backing of
Yeah,
it.
I smelled that coming because I'm like, I don't even think this is what they're getting tried for. I think it is an accusation that they just ran with.
Yeah, it's a
which is terrible. They have video evidence of the article is talking about, and they're not even like. Did these people actually end up in jail?
Well, yeah, they're
maybe I'm getting ahead of you.
Yeah, I'm. It sounds like they're found guilty. So
when did this event take place? Maybe I missed that.
2021, I think, or Breitbart. In 2021.
So
were they wearing masks? That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, see, you probably you would think, okay, that's been about 3 years, maybe not quite, but it's possible that that's still going through the system.
Well, this is a new story.
Okay.
It's a recent story. This was like front page.
Okay, so this is a recent story, but the events happened in 2021.
Right. The story is they were found guilty.
They were found guilty. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Since the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, the DOJ has notably charged more pro-life activists under the FACE Act than pro-abortion activists, despite the fact that FBI Director Christopher Wray admitted in November of 2022 that approximately 70% of abortion-related threats of violence in the U.S. since the Dobbs decision have been against pro-life groups. In December of 2022, Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta also admitted in the remarks that the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division's 65th anniversary that the end of Roe v. Wade dialed up the urgency of the DOJ's work, including enforcement of the FACE Act to, quote, ensure continued lawful access to reproductive services. So I'm really big on this, man. When I hear a term that is used to that's used to persuade the listener, I just really grinds my gears. Like reproductive services. It's not a buzzsaw for little babies. It's because if they called it a buzzsaw for little babies, they probably wouldn't get as much, support. But instead, it's like, it's reproductive services for the fetus.
As wonderful and as beautiful as the Declaration of Independence was, our forefathers forgot to add a footnote in there that says, and by the way, these rights are for people that are in the womb.
Well, because they probably wouldn't have considered.
They wouldn't even consider that would be a thing.
Offering their babies to Molech.
Yeah.
Anyway.
True.
Yeah, I know.
True. Absolutely.
No. The Biden administration's pursuit of pro-life activists has resulted in several high-profile cases, including that of Catholic father of 7 Mark Houck, who was found not guilty of federal assault charges brought by President Joe Biden's DOJ. See, that's what I'm saying about this article. It's like President Joe Biden's DOJ, like it's the DOJ. The DOJ had decided to press charges against Houck, even though local authorities had declined to press charges. There were also several pro-life activists sitting in jail awaiting sentencing, including 2 women over the age of 70 who were primarily found guilty of conspiracy against rights and violating the FACE Act for an abortion clinic blockade that took place in Washington, D.C. in 2020. They also face 11 years in prison, which if you're doing the math, that's 81 years old they'll be. In response to these incidents, Representative Chip Roy of Texas introduced legislation in September of 2023 to repeal the FACE Act, which, quote, prohibits threat of force, obstruction, and property damage intended to interfere with reproductive health care services. Roy said that while the law was designed to protect the abortion facilities, it had instead been weaponized by President Joe Biden's DOJ to target the pro-life activists. Again, I don't really agree with saying it in that way, but this isn't really like this isn't about that.
At the end of the day, it sounds like somebody who was a part of the court case had an obvious bias towards the pro-choice side of things, and there, in justice, there should be no bias. It should be upholding the law.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
It should be one system that everybody adheres to.
Yep. And now somebody else can make this argument too. Maybe they would normally be unbiased. Maybe they were threatened. and maybe where I totally get what you're saying. I wouldn't say it that way too with adding Joe Biden on there, but you could also, if you go that route of saying perhaps somebody was persuaded, quote unquote, that would make sense why somebody would be persuading there.
Well, I think Breitbart has a certain people that go to their site and that's what they want to hear, and there's a little bit of leeway in that. And I don't. The point was that these pro-abortion or these anti-abortion activists, they threw the book at them.
Yeah, they sure did.
This is the third story. Now, the third story is the part where I wanted to caution parents. So this is the part where it gets a little gritty. The U.S. Capitol Police said Thursday that they will not bring charges against a former congressional staffer who was filmed having sex in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room in December. After consulting with federal and local prosecutors, as well as doing a comprehensive investigation and review of possible charges, it was determined that, despite a likely violation of congressional policy, there is currently no evidence that a crime was committed, the law enforcement agency said in a statement. The Capitol Police, according to Wikipedia, just so you know, the United States Capitol Police is a federal law enforcement agency with nationwide jurisdiction charged with protecting the U.S. Congress within D.C. and throughout the U.S. and its territories. They said it was, quote, officially closing the investigation into the facts and circumstances. The video, which was first reported by the Daily Caller, featured a male staffer of Democratic Maryland Senator Ben Cardin having sex with another male in the hearing room, including the senator's seats and desks. The staffer, Aidan Mays Zarobsky, quickly left his job following the video's publication, blaming his ouster on his sexuality. Quote, this is from the offender. Mm-hmm. This has been a difficult time for me, as I have been attacked for who I love to pursue a political agenda, he wrote on LinkedIn. While some of my actions in the past have shown poor judgment, I love my job and would never disrespect my workplace. Any attempts...
Oh, he would never.
He would never. Any attempts to characterize my actions otherwise are fabricated, and I will be exploring what legal options are available to me in these matters. The Capitol Police said Mr. Mays Zarobsky exercised his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and refused to talk to us during the investigation. Although the hearing room was not open to the public at the time, the congressional staffer involved had access to the room, Capitol Police said. The two people of interest were not cooperative, nor were the elements of any possible crimes met. Mr. Cardin, who is retiring this year, told reporters after the incident came to light that he was, quote, angry and, quote, disappointed at the one-time aid. It's a breach of trust, he said. It's a breach of trust, Josh.
Yeah. That's definitely a breach.
Yeah. What do you make of all this?
So as horrifying as all this is, it really is the definition of what Jesus said in the Bible of woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. We've got an example that you brought before about something being good, somebody trying to stop a murder. Like I picture it this way, right? This is going to be kind of a silly illustration, but it comes to mind. Do you remember that point in the movie The Incredibles where he jumps out of a building, the superhero does, to save a guy that's trying to kill himself off of a building? Like, surprisingly dark for a child movie, cartoon. But he saves this guy, but he sustains injuries because he's diving off a building to save him. He saves his life, but he presses charges, and that's kind of what kicks off the whole story, is all the superheroes have to go into hiding and assimilate into society as regular people because they start presenting law. They start suing all the superheroes because he's like, I didn't want you to save me. I wanted to end my life. Well, like, I just find a parallel there. Like, you're trying to save lives and you get convicted as a criminal versus an actual criminal who did a criminal act, who is supposed to be a public servant, gets off scot-free.
Yeah. Ultimately, they decided no crime had been committed. And I was like, it's not illegal to have sex in the Senate floor of
Yeah.
the congressional building? It's like, where
Yep.
isn't it? You know, I mean, I think the next step is like, obviously, openly doing it. You know what I mean? It's like, if that's not illegal, if that doesn't get you land you in jail, what will?
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, blocking, destroying a satanic,
Yep, all those things
statue
will get
that
you.
will.
Yep.
Now,
if you were to, okay, so the premise of that second one was a peaceful protest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was actually a peaceful protest. Now, there's a lot of alleged peaceful protests that people have done in the last 4 years or so. Before that too, but it really kicked off at 2020. Some things happened. And so you have all these peaceful protests according to not Breitbart, but somebody who would fall on the other side of the political aisle.
yeah.
And where people were actually getting killed. Like there was a video that surfaced where somebody in a mob just came up and was trying to rob a guy who, mind you, it was not a racial thing either. They were the same race, and just murdered somebody on the street.
Jeez.
And it was a part of that, because people, it just escalates when people are going wild, like setting things on fire, destroying private property, and all those things. Those were still referred to as peaceful protests, even though people were literally getting murdered.
Yeah. And that's back to
Innocent people.
that idea of using words to weaponizing words.
Yep. The left, as if we're speaking politics, or let's take it in a biblical
Well, I'd
sense.
just say like politicians do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's not a left-right thing.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm going to pay them a compliment as far as the art of strategizing and weaponizing words like that. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but you could say they are better at wielding that weapon, far better than the right side of the aisle. I feel like the right side is kind of catching up, but they are way behind.
Yeah. That's not a good thing to be good at, but
right.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Speaking from like a political strategy point of view,
Oh, yeah.
they're better at it. Now, from a biblical point of view, let's let our yea be yea and our nay be nay. Let's not try to cloak and dagger things. Let's be truthful.
Yeah, or at the very least, like, let's figure out what the words are that are actually supposed to be said and use those words, because that can actually be a controversy as well. Like when we say baby and we say life and we say fetus is a way of distracting from the thing.
Yeah. I know a guy who is pretty involved in politics. He doesn't do well in elections because where we're at, but he would be a biblically minded person, but he will go into the Capitol. Here's Lansing. He'll go into the Capitol building with these political meetings, and he'll openly use the word sodomite for homosexuals.
Whoa.
And he's like, I'm using the biblical term here.
Yeah, that's not going to get him elected.
Right, that's not going to get him elected, but it's kind of along those same lines of, even as Christians, sometimes so we started talking about the weaponizing words of exaggerative, like let's exaggerate this to get our message across, get people on our side. But you can also underemphasize your words by saying, well, I don't want to use this word, so I'm going to use this word because that sounds nicer.
Yeah, I think we have a tendency to lean away from those kinds of things. I do think that there's a biblical
there's a discernment
imperative for a quiet life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a biblical imperative for being to not have a podcast and to not protest things and to not, you know what I mean? And just to say, do your own thing in your own way, you know what I mean? Not to say that those people were wrong or anything like that, but you know what I mean?
Right. I think it's important to, rather than go around necessarily phrasing it as you need to live your life this way and like telling people what to do, it should be, we proclaim the truth so much. And we not only proclaim the truth, but we do it in love, and we also make it look attractive to other people. Like this is genuine over here. Mm-hmm. Over here, yes, this may be political correctness and all this other stuff over here, but it's really just a facade, and it's not genuine. And allowing people to observe and be exposed to the truth, so that they can see the difference between the counterfeits in life. and that I don't think I think there's a movement, at least amongst Christianity, to insert truth more into the public space, but it's not nearly enough. We're getting drowned out still by the opposing voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm of the belief that we will not know the moment when the Lord returns. It'll be like, it won't be preceded by anything. I know some people don't agree with that or whatever, different end times theories and things like that. But I kind of think that it stands to reason that things are going to get worse before they get better.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that we'll know the day, the time. It's for us to know the day, the time, the season, or the hour. So that implies that it could be any moment.
Mm-hmm.
So as I see things getting worse, or as I see things, hear stories like this, I wonder, well, what did the Lord have intended for us to do with all this? What did he think? He said, okay, it's going to get bad, and you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to see the things in the world. You're going to have to see bad things happen to good people,
Mm-hmm.
and good things happen to bad people. And what are you going to do with all that? Because as it goes on, we're going to hear more of that, right? We're going to hear more stories like this are going to come out, and because of the advent of social media and the internet, it's going to be like, you're going to hear more of these stories. You know what I mean? And you're going to be tempted to be angry, or tempted to, do things that you shouldn't maybe do. You know what I mean? It's gonna
Right.
You're gonna have anger and fear, which anger and fear kind of hold hands. But this is the point I want to make with this episode. Fearing or being unduly angry about the state of the world is not the will of God for your life.
Yeah. Yep. He's not giving us a spirit of fear.
When we talk about his will, we talk about two types of will, right? There's the will of what will happen. He willed this to happen. And then there's the will that if God could say to you, if he could bridge the gap between what he's saying and your understanding with 100% clarity, that would be his will, right? It's not his will that you would divorce your wife and run out and leave your family behind,
Right.
right? It is not his will that you would be unduly angry. And we'll talk about anger in a future episode. But to be fearful or unduly angry about the state of the world is not his will for your life.
Mm-hmm.
Ephesians 4:31, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Ephesians 4:26 and 27, be angry and yet don't sin.
Right.
Don't let the sun go down in your anger, and give the devil an opportunity. Give the devil an opportunity at night when you just sit and stew at your anger,
Yeah. Yeah. The things that are going on in the world aren't meant to make us angry and emotional. What it really should do, because this should happen when it's personal conflict or when it's outward, like it's not directly impacting you, but it's in a way affecting you. You could say God is spurring us to action, and I'm not saying acts of violence. I'm saying do something about it. Be the light and the grace that the world needs to see. That is, that's God's intention for that. Dan's talking about what's not God's intention, and that's very important too. Like, it's not his intention to get you angry and upset. Now, there's a righteous indignation you can have. Even Jesus had an example where they were violating his temple, which represented his Lord's house, and he went in and he overturned the tables. But at the same time, he didn't hurt anybody. He was just very direct as far as that's what you were covering when you just said that verse. I forget the reference, but be angry and sin not. Right?
Yeah. Yep. And like I say, I'm going to expound on anger in another episode, because when I was writing this, I was thinking I had started writing this, and then the topic of how we respond to this is where I wanted to really take it. I really wanted to talk about how we respond to it, because that's what this podcast is all about, is equipping the saints to contend in this crazy world. And so it doesn't get much crazier than this. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't get much crazier than the story. You know, and for now it doesn't.
Yeah, for now.
You know,
That's a good
this
point.
is, you know, it's definitely crazier than most things. But anyway, but what I was getting at, Romans 8, right? What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who's against us? The Lord in Psalms is my light and salvation. Whom will I fear?
Yeah.
The Lord is the defense of my life.
Yeah.
Who will I dread? John 16, these things I've spoken to you, this is Jesus speaking, so that in me you may have peace. In the world, you'll have tribulation. But take courage. I've overcome the world.
That's good. It's a good reminder. And remember this too, Paul and Silas, they were thrown in jail for similar things. Where that it sounds terrible in America, and it is. It should be that way. But back then, the world they were living in, the Roman Empire, things like that could happen easily. One parallel example I just thought of too, with that example you were talking about, where they were outside protesting, or really they were trying to help people. Like, hey, let us pray with you and let us talk to you, let us help you, so that you don't have to make this decision that you may live to regret. And essentially, they were trying to stop the murder of an innocent. Think about this: Jesus, when he was captured and led away to be crucified, who was it that drew out a sword?
It was. Go ahead.
It was Peter.
Yeah, let's just say Peter.
Yeah, Peter. And so he drew out a sword and he cut off the ear of the soldier. What was he trying to do? He was trying to protect the murder of an innocent person. And Peter could have been taken away, and Jesus is like, "Whoa, Peter! Like, I want this to happen." And he fixed the guy's ear. But it's an example too where we can get really angry and like do something that we regret in impulsiveness, but the cause was just, right? The cause was just. He was trying to protect Jesus, who didn't need protecting. But.
Yep, we have a lot of opportunity to do things like that, to draw the sword and to attack the enemy and things like that. But it's really just chasing after the wind a little bit because, I'll tell you why. And
Jesus did say, carry a sword. He didn't say to use it at that time, but he did say carry a sword.
Well, it was, I just meant he gave us the word to stand on. And boy, if we dig into it, we can really find things that will enrich our lives and help us with these particular situations. Because I see it a lot where people are kind of they're really down about the way the world's going. Yeah. Hebrews 13, he says, we believers confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What will man do to me?
Good question.
If God wanted us to be fearful and angry unduly and doing things like that, then why did he say, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest?
Yeah.
Take your yoke upon me and learn from me. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. Right? So when you look at the world and you see these crazy people out there, I heard a pastor last year, he said, or 2 years ago, he said, when you see those people and you see what they're doing, just remember to yourself, it's just that they're so confused. Because that's what the world has done. They've created a confusing world, making people believe lies that are just flat out lies.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't even know what gender they are. That's how confused they are.
Right.
Right? When you see those people, your responsibility as a believer, as a by faith believer, is to lead them graciously into the Lord. And that's the fact of the matter. That famous verse, the most famous verse, right? For God so loved the world. And when he refers to the world in the in the Gospels. He's talking about the unbelieving world. He so loved those unbelievers, he gave his only son, so whoever might believe would not perish. Romans 3, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's us, right? That's believers. We've all sinned, fallen short, being justified as a gift by his grace through redemption, which is in Christ Jesus. The wages of sin is death, but the free gift is eternal life in Christ. By grace you've been saved through faith, not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, Philippians 2, but with humility of mind. And this is so important, believers who are listening. Really think about this. With humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. Colossians 4, conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. And making the most of the opportunity, in my opinion, is not necessarily stirring it up with the government.
Mm-hmm.
Making the most of the opportunity, the very next half of that verse, let your speech always be with grace.
I love that verse.
As though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person.
Yep.
And it kind of ends here. Sanctify Christ as Lord in your heart. Always be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you. And yet, with gentleness and reverence.
Thank you for listening to the Life and Faith podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review on your favorite platform, and sharing it with friends and family. Your support helps us continue spreading the gospel of faith, hope, and love. Connect with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many others to stay updated on our latest episodes. See the link in the show notes for all our social media channels. And until next time, it is our hope you'll commit yourself to an even deeper life in faith.